Now, mind you, I'm going to say this because in that question, you're opening up a real big can of worms, right?
All right.
So peep how a lot of this is based off of how we came up and I'll say traumatic situations that many of us were raised up in.
Right.
So when you grow up in poverty, you grow up in trauma. But the way our minds were taught to deal with that trauma was that you build you an environment of security, meaning you pick people who are going to be your tribe and you stick to those people. The reason why that's a circle of security is because y'all kind of know how each other's move. You know each other's vibes. You know if you do this, they're going to do this. And you're not going to get these funny reactions to when you do things. It's about predictability. Where the rest of the world, they move funny according to you. They don't got the same flavor. They don't got the same way of doing things. So if I go messing with those people, I'm doing this, they're doing that. It's all out of whack. Somebody going to get hurt. I'm going to get hurt. So you stick to your people. Here's the catch. Now think about how that translates into the real world, right? In the real world, you would never let me come and sit at your table unless you knew what I was bringing to the table.
Agreed.
You follow what I'm saying? I would never strike and go into business with you unless I knew what value you were bringing to the table, right? But in our culture, we think if somebody only rocking with you because of what you bring to the table, then they're not real. So we close ourselves.
Yeah, you're right. That's what we're taught to believe. But
So-
that's not the case.
Well, think about what that does to you, right? So what happens is we feel funny when we, and remember, we're just talking about this presence.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to where we started.
I got you.
But here's what happens to you. Just the psychology of growing up in the mud. What happens to you is all those environments outside of your comfort zone where people want something from you. People see the value that you have, and they want to capitalize on that value. They want you to bring that value to the table. You feel funny about that space. So you won't vibe in none of those spaces when the reality is the only thing you're supposed to do is know what you want when you go to the table. That means I don't really care if you see something in me that you think is valuable that you want to be at your table. Well, I got enough sense to look at you and see what values you have that I need and say, okay, I'll do this as long as you do this. And the minute you don't do this, guess what? We can still be cool, but I got to find somebody else. And when we have to break it off, I'm no longer injured, feeling like, oh, he took advantage of me. He only used me for as long as I was work. That's actually how it works in the real world. No one's going to sit around you just because you want to be around where you've ceased to be able to bring value to the table, right? So peep game, right?
So that's like leaving. So I had a theory about a rocket taking off.
Mm-hmm.
It drops pieces as it takes off and goes into space.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it keeps all those pieces, it'll be way down, right?
Yeah.
It had to be light enough to travel into Earth's orbit.
But a lot of what you got to drop is just thinking.
Right.
Not necessarily people, just thinking, right? So what I say is that what I knew is that in order for me to move into that larger space, I have to engage with people who necessarily are not a part of my tribe, necessarily don't move how I move, necessarily don't love me. They're going to deal with me based off of what I bring to the table. And when I'm no longer able to bring what I bring to the table, I'm going to mess around and get injured. Yeah. Here's the deal about humility. That means I have to walk around dealing in a space where people don't know me, don't rock with me, but they know me. We're dealing with each other to a certain degree. And I'm getting injured all the time. But who am I to believe I'm not supposed to be punched? Who am I to believe I'm not supposed to be injured by other people's thoughts and opinions? So much so that I'm willing to isolate myself to a small group and make my life small. Here's the deal. In order to make my life big, in order to fit in that big space that we're talking about, it's not me agreeing to be big. A part of that is me agreeing that I'm small enough that every time I go to City Hall and work with the people at City Hall or try to work with them, every time I go to the police department and try to vibe with them, I know they don't think like I think. I know somehow they're going to do me wrong in that space. But who am I to say I can't be done wrong? See, we operate out of a sense of injury.
And fear.
Yeah, because we've been injured so much and so traumatized that we'll close ourselves off into a space where we think nothing's going to happen. But the trade-off is that you get a small life. For all that I'm willing to endure, the people who know me, the people who like me, the people who don't like me, the people who feel like they shrink when I come around and they get tired of shrinking, so they start acting funny and I don't know why they acting that way. Whatever it is, who am I to say that I can't live with that? I just live with it every day. Otherwise, I would only deal with the people who I deal with. Yeah. And I would close myself off into that tribe. Now, I love the fact that I've got a tribe. I love the fact that I've got a Brandon, I've got a Jermaine Harrison, I've got a G Todd, I've got a you, I've got folks that I'm tighter with. Right. But at the same token, this community is my community, full of people who don't think like me, who don't vibe like me, and they all feel different types of ways.
That's facts.
And I'm okay with it all. Yeah. You know.
Speaking of the community, like I said, it's been 2 years since we actually been on camera with the enemy. Yeah. We talk behind the scenes a lot. But let's get into the protest that happened earlier last year.
Yeah, June 2020. Never forget it.
It was lit. What was your position in those protests, you would say? Because you was outside with them too.
Yeah, to a certain point. I missed the big day.
Word.
So first,
oh, excuse me.
I approach everything with a philosophy. I don't approach anything just out of the blue. Anything I'm doing, I've thought through it. Now, mind you, I did time. I had time to think. I had time to build up what I call my personal constitution, my set of principles that I follow.
Word.
So when it comes to protest, things of that nature, I'm typically a no. I'm not the one that's really for protesting.
Word.
Just,
Why is that? Feel like that doesn't get anything done?
Well, depending on how we do it. There's certain ways. I like protest comes in all forms. But I mean like
physical protests outside, signs?
Yeah, demonstrations of that nature. I could do it. Here's the deal. All right, let's back up. Principles of organizing for me. I don't do all calls.
Okay.
Meaning, I don't look up for a cause and be like, everybody come stand with me. Because, again, I know organizations that the only thing they want to do is pack their meetings up with tons of people and get their membership up to get a ton of people to join. Think about this. Whenever you get a group of people together and you're putting yourself in a position to lead them, here's the requirements of your leadership. I've got to be able to look at you all and basically give you some idea of if we work together, in 1 year's time, we could achieve this. In 2 years' time, we can achieve this. 5 years, this. I got to be able to give you some idea of a goal that we can achieve, right? Well, here's the deal. If I got a bunch of people with me and I don't know who you are, what skills you have, what you bring to the table, I haven't taken an inventory of anything about you, whatever I'm about to open up my mouth to tell you we can do, I'm lying to you. Because I don't even know I'd rather have 15 people that I know exactly what we came to do, what skills you bring to the table, and then when I open up my mouth, I've at least not set myself up to lie to you, and then we can do this work. So I don't just do all calls, A. Secondly, I don't call on anger and frustration to do my bidding. The thing about those spirits, I learned to not play with funny spirits that I don't know. I've seen what anger and frustration can do. A lot of times for political expediency, we know that we can rile and play on people's emotions and they'll show up. Yeah. So that's it. Otherwise, it might take deeper conversations. I might actually have to go sit down with these people, figure out what they're thinking to get them to come. But if I know something's wrong and I can play on their frustration, I can just hit that button and they react, right? Here's the problem though. You have to understand the powers you've been given and where those powers stop. So we've been given the power to call on certain energies, certain spirits, if you want to call it. So I can call on the energy of frustration and anger because I have that power. But where your power stops is once I fill the room with energy and frustration, I don't have the power to tell those spirits when to leave. Does that make any sense? So if I call my team together, get my squad together, and I fill the room up with anger and frustration and the whatever, then when that thing starts taking over, it becomes the master of ceremonies in the room, and we've all lost power. Now there's no leader. Yeah. I will never lead people to a place I can't get them back from. So that's second reason I don't do that vibe. Okay. But if I ever look at that type of vibe and I see my young people involved, I'm coming. If it was me personally, I wouldn't do it. But if I look out and I see that energy riling up and I see my high school students jumping involved, moms, children coming out, my deal is this.
I heard there's about 500 people out there.
So my ordeal is this. I'm going to go, not because I'm chasing the limelight, but because I'm thinking if there's anything I can do to help this situation happen in a way that's positive for them, because here's the catch. For some of these people, it's their first time getting engaged in community life.